Well, good afternoon and welcome back to the Debrief hosted in association with British Rowing and Junior Rowing News. I'm Ed Evans and I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by Matilda Horn, Olympic coxswain and European silver medalist, Angus Groom, Olympic silver medalist and Oxford boat race winner, and Kath Bishop, Olympic silver medalist, Henley Stewart and chair of Love Rowing. Over the last few days, there's been some really exciting racing out in Germany and Munich for the European Rowing Championships. And over the next 20-25 minutes or so, we're going to take you through some of the key results with GB and some of the nations around the world as well. Without any further ado, let's jump straight in. And Angus, if I come to you first, the men's open events, especially on the sweep side, a really good weekend for the team. We'll drill down on some of the individual events in a second, but just sort of give me your broad thoughts on how they've done.
Yeah, fantastically across the board, I think. Well, what can you say about our men's eight? For my money, I think they're our best ever men's eight that GB have ever fielded. And I'm particularly excited about them because I've had one of my crewmates from Oxford this year in at Charlie Elwes, and so getting a bit of an inside track, I kind of know how quick they're going back at home, and I think they can break the world record this year. They just need the right conditions. And the men's four, 3 wins out of 3 so far. I think that's right. And I think going into Silveretta, those guys are going to be absolutely buzzing. For a lot of them, it's going to be their first time up in Silveretta too. It's a super special camp, and I'm super jealous actually that I'm not going this year. And I guess on the men's sculling side, there were some really encouraging results. I think the quad did a really good job. That was their third race together, and they put together some pretty good performances, I think. And I think speaking to the Harry and Tom, I think they're pretty pleased with their performance, and I think they're pretty optimistic about coming up to the World Champs. And I thought Graham did a fantastic job in the singles today, but I think perhaps he may have just got his strategy slightly wrong. And he's our best single sculler in the country, and he hasn't raced much internationally in the single. And these things you're just going to pick up through experience. So I'm sure he'll look at this. He'll look at this experience as really good learning experience and use that for the Worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back in just a second to sort of drill down on some of the results in more detail. But Matilda, if I bounce to you for the same thing on the women's side with the open weights, again, really strong showing. I think medals in every single sweep boat for the women. A really strong day out.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think they've obviously had a new coach come in, and I think they're really excited about. Initially, I think it was quite a shock, the change in training program and how they're sort of getting on with each other. And I think it's brilliant how it's developed over the season. They're obviously doing a really great job in terms of the women's four leading the way with their times are super fast. And obviously we didn't see that as much this weekend with the headwind, but I think that it's exciting that it's being led from a very calm and collected of, right, this is our training, this is our racing, we'll just sort of tick the boxes and go through our pattern and our strategy, and it seems to be paying off really well. And I think that obviously lightweight women's double, excellent, fantastic. But I think that it's just been really exciting for the women's team. They're obviously away from home for a bit now, so the men are going off to Silveretta, like Angus said, and the women are off to Varese. Again, also really jealous. It's like my favourite place. But I think that they'll have a really good time, and I think it's going to be quite exciting to see them sort of spend time in a hot place trying to turn the pace, because I think they've got really good base pace going, and you can see that in the events. They just are slightly losing out, and M Ford was saying this at the end of the pairs race. They did their race plan and they nailed their race plan, but they didn't have that turn of speed to take through the Romanians at the end. So hopefully they can go away and work on that, and that'll be really great for them to have that focus before the Worlds, which is really exciting.
Yeah, super exciting times coming up, both for the camps and for the Worlds later on this year. Before we drill down further, Kath, just coming to you for the power events. British rowing have got a great history in those events of doing well, especially in the four. And again, this weekend, a gold in the four and a bronze for Ben Pritchard in a single. Again, sets them up really well as we head towards the World Champs.
Yeah, I mean, that squad has always led the way, haven't they? And, that four now have such an incredible record. They've got the kind of incredible story of, Erin Kennedy and what she's going through at the moment that is making it really a special crew to follow, to support. But, they've always led from the front. And I can't imagine that changing in the sort of foreseeable future. It's great to see Ben. He is growing with each race. He's still really on a learning curve, and you see that and you can hear that, when he's talking about his races. But there's also such a wonderful camaraderie between everyone in his event, and I just love seeing that too. So watching their progress has been really exciting this weekend.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Really, really exciting stuff to come from the Para squad, I think. Angus, coming back to you, we've discussed the men's 8, but let's move on to the 4, a boat class which GB has historically either dominated or almost dominated. As we head towards Paris, the World Championships is looking good for the 4. Do we think they can hold on as the rest of the world comes back in and kind of see where their head's going to be at the minute?
Well, I really like their attitude on their post-race interview on BBC. Actually, they said they've got a really good. I think they just got nothing to lose for them at the minute, and I think we've been in this position before in the men's 4 last year, where they just they dominated the World Cup and European scene. And then they got a little bit unstuck when it came to the World Champs, and I think it's just because the rest of the field kind of caught up with them. So I think those guys should really have that in the back of their mind. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but this period now, it's a bit of an unknown. It's like it's what 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that, until the World Champs, and it's something that Jürgen always used to say to us: "Loser train harder." And as I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. And perhaps they've got to respect that, and the rest of the world, and particularly the Aussies in that event, who they're Olympic champions. Their pride's at stake here. They're going to be, that they're going to be watching those European champs, and GB have got target on their backs now. So yeah, I think I think they'll be in pretty good headspace, and just carry on as they're doing, because that's what's bringing them success.
Absolutely. I think Jürgen's sentiment will be taken by everyone this weekend as they head towards September. Kath, moving on to you, just take a look at the men's pair. That pair fresh out of the boat race for Cambridge have had a really, really good season so far. Knocked off that top place this weekend by the Romanians, but still a strong race for them. How do you think they'll be feeling coming away from this weekend?
Yeah, I think both pairs, it was a really good race. They're both really learning. And I think in some of those small boats, like Angus was saying about Graham in the single as well, there's a lot to kind of learn about what can happen in the 2,000 metre race, to build out your versatility, to think about how the boat is running over the, in between the strokes, how you get that rhythm to really allow the boat to move. And what I love about the men's pair and the women's pair is they have that really good kind of solid middle of the race pace. Now, it really worked for the women up to sort of 1,500. For the men, maybe it didn't quite work in the middle 1,000 as much as it has, but you could just see they're kind of learning all the time. And I think for them, it's about getting that sort of confidence to get the next stage of maintaining that speed in the second half of the race, and to be thinking about, if you look at kind of the Kiwis, going back sort of Hamish and Bond and Murray, to really think about how they raced, and that should be their aim, that you kind of you get on the line almost like you do on an ergo, and you just kind of maintain that through the whole 2,000 meters, and they just haven't quite got the consistency, and so I think they did just get a little bit rattled, but only in a way that they're going to learn from. I think they're going to immediately know this is what we should have done at that point when we were being challenged, and that then gives you the sense of, I know what to do to step up. So I'm really excited about what both the pairs can do at the Worlds, and they are so far from being the kind of complete version of what they're capable of.
Okay, can I jump in there as well, please? I think just for both of those pairs as well, it's worth remembering they got beaten by two Romanian crews, and historically, and you can kind of see that as well, Romania target European champs as a lot of their funding depends on that. It's something that's a lot bigger in the Eastern European countries, Poland, Romania, these places that. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily peak for the Europeans. So actually, they did. I don't think they should be too worried, to be honest, about that. But it's still good to learn these lessons.
What I really liked about a lot of our crews is we're underrating others, and that's such a good sign because it means you've got somewhere to go between now and the Worlds. Whereas you're in trouble if you're sort of, if you're kind of flatlining it at, caning it down at 40 plus, particularly in the small boats. Then what more will the Romanians do? They'll do the same thing. They'll be a little sharper, but there's 4 pips or some points of the races that our sweep crews have got to go to kind of move up. So that's why this is, I think, an exciting weekend. You can see that there are more gears to be developed if they get this next period right.
Classic British strategy of underrating everyone else and then telling the screw at the right moment. Exciting to watch how that develops towards the World Champs. Matilda, bouncing to you, we've sort of touched on the women's pair, but drilling down a little further on the 4 and the 8, a silver and a gold, I think quite exciting for the team moving forward.
Oh, hugely. I think, as Angus was saying, I was having a conversation earlier today with some friends about the Romanian team. Exactly the same or very similar thing happened to us in the women's 8 when we raced at in Lucerne in the European Championships. And you do slightly expect that turn of speed from the Romanians at this point. And I think it was quite tough. I thought the women's 8 had like an excellent rhythm. They were very long. It looked very strong. And I guess we do have to remember they're doubling up. So they've raced in the 4 and the pair, and then they've sort of doubled up into that 8. So I guess they do have races in their legs, but it's probably likely the Romanians doubling up. So it's something to remember. But I think they looked long and strong, and I'd like to have seen them look a little bit sharper and a little bit racier, almost prepared and ready for that turn of pace from the Romanians in that instance. In the women's 8, obviously silver medal, absolutely fantastic, and it's really, really exciting that everybody's medaling. But I'd like to have seen a little bit of that. I thought the women's 4 were very dominant. I think knowing the girls in that boat, Rebecca, Rowan, really well, they're very good at leading from the front, and they're very calm when they're doing that. And I think their rhythm, they've won trials a number of times in that combination. I think they know each other so well now. And it was great to hear afterwards Rowan saying in the interview how the camaraderie of the team and like just the atmosphere of training with the girls and being in the team at the moment is really encouraging. So I think that's obviously rubbing off on each other. And then, as Kath said, like the pair were fantastic, and again, just slightly didn't have that turn of pace, but they nailed their race plan. So I think going away for them, knowing that they've got this really great unit going, they've got this fantastic squad where everybody's really supporting each other. I think it's going to be really interesting to see when it gets really tough and you're away for 5-6 weeks together, you're not getting a break from each other, how they continue to support each other and push each other forwards so they can find those extra few pips. And I'd like, to see hopefully the 8 racing at the World Champs, but that slight turn of pace and that sharp, like not sharpness in terms of accuracy of the spoons, but sharpness in terms of like real triggered and fired, ready to go into that last 300, 400 meters. That energy, I think, could just be lifted a little bit, but really exciting for them. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that for them, the only other race they've done in the 8 this year is Henley. And we all know Henley is a very different ball game. So you get yourself up, you stay up, it's match racing. Moving back into lane racing, I couldn't agree more. And just that step into the big boat rhythm that you see the men's 8 have from stroke 1. They're calm, but that boat is shifting from stroke 1, and there's absolutely no way they're letting anybody come back into contention. And I think it's that taking that confidence and a little bit of, hopefully, a little bit of, arrogance in a good way that we don't normally carry as Brits, but like taking that little bit of arrogance from winning the smaller boats and getting medals in the smaller boats and trying to build a really big boat mentality, I think will be really important for them if they're continuing, like you say, to double up in the 8. But exciting.
I suspect they probably spent least time in the 8, and I think you could see that. I think they'll be hardest on themselves about the 8's result, because you don't have that much up in an 8 and kind of think, oh, that's okay to be rowed through to that degree. It's unusual, isn't it? Because an 8's race is so much faster, shorter. So I think they will feel kind of disappointed to have had that much and not hold on to it and not manage to win. Again, I think it's all going to be part of this learning process. But I think they will feel actually that there's a little bit too much of that slower boats rhythm that meant they just didn't quite have enough sharpness actually through the middle. It was a good rhythm, but it was a 4's rhythm rather than an 8's rhythm, and that's what again, it's just a learning thing, isn't it? But I think of the 3 results, the pair before the 8. The 8's the one where I kind of think, that there was something missing there, because you had that much lead on the Romanians. Now they'll have huge confidence because they had that much lead on the Romanians when the Romanians are peaking for these championships. So there's a ton of positives, but there's definitely a bit of 8's rowing learning for that group to kind of do if they're going to double up like this at the Worlds.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that for them, the only other race they've done in the 8 this year is Henley, and we all know Henley is a very different ball game. So you get yourself up, you stay up, it's match racing. Moving back into lane racing, I couldn't agree more. And just that step into the big boat rhythm that you see the men's 8 have from stroke 1. They're calm, but that boat is shifting from stroke 1, and there's absolutely no way they're letting anybody come back into contention. And I think it's that taking that confidence and a little bit of, hopefully, a little bit of, arrogance in a good way that we don't normally carry as Brits, but like taking that little bit of arrogance from winning the smaller boats and getting medals in the smaller boats and trying to build a really big boat mentality, I think will be really important for them if they're continuing, like you say, to double up in the 8. But exciting.
Definitely exciting. I think work to go, but I think if they can pull it off, it'll be a real spectacle and a real combination for the British sweep team. Angus, coming to you for both the men's and the women's squads. On the women's side, we had Lola Anderson on, I think, for the 3rd World Cup. They've been so close all season. They've finally got that gold medal that they've been searching for. And on the men's side, very, very close to a podium, coming in 4th place. Two very similar boats, but 2 very different stories. How are they going to be feeling coming away from this weekend?
Oh, well, I mean, what can you say about that women's quad? It was, that was my race of the weekend. Really, it was so good, and it was so nice to see them just with huge smiles on the podium as well. That obviously meant a hell of a lot to them, and they looked so good, like real good rhythm. They just took the race by the scruff of the neck and just went. And yeah, I think they'll be feeling great. To be honest. The men's quad, I think, like I alluded to earlier, it's their 3rd race together, and they, I thought, perhaps the highlight of their whole regatta was actually their their semi-final that they caught the crab, and how they responded to that was absolutely spot on. And they found something that they didn't know that they had really, and I think that's if I was Paul Stannard, their coach, that's what I'd be really pleased with, and it was a huge step up from them in terms of what's been happening this year with the quad, and they've got the right lineup now, I think, because it's kind of been changing a bit, but I think that's hugely pleasing for them. And if I'm thinking back to our experience last year, coming into the Silveretta camp, we had a pretty bad time in the Varese camp beforehand, and we weren't going very quick at all. And you can make huge bounds with speed. So they got the right pieces, I think they've just got to work out together and how to fit those pieces together, I guess, and exactly how they want to race. And I think what I'd like to see as well is I like Harry and Tom as the more experienced guys in that event, certainly at senior level, to really take ownership of that and just build. I think they'll be good come the World Championships.
Sorry. I was just going to jump in and say I completely agree with that, with the men's squad. And I thought it's really noticeable that they're obviously putting the pieces together because it's such a big, of course, it's a slightly different crew, but such a big step on from where they've been. And I think that that's really positive, really promising, and allows them to then build on that. So yeah, I thought that was brilliant.
I think where they lost that final was just in that second 500 really, and that's really key in the quad. We found that out over the past couple of seasons. You have to go hard in that first K to be in the race, and they got there. I know that they were talking about their going out with intent, because they had a really good first 500. But yeah, they just slipped off the pace a little bit. And actually, like, you know, some of those other crews, like this Romanian crews popped up. They had their Tokyo double in, who've been around the A final of the double for the past Olympiad, and they're looking super slick. You got the Chinese to come back into it, but you know, I think these guys are on a steep learning curve, and they can definitely, I think they can definitely get in the A final, if not medal at the Worlds.
Definitely exciting to see where those two boats go, especially the women's squad. Will be really exciting to see how they get on at the Worlds. Kath, coming to you for the lightweight events. Obviously, only one British crew entered across men's and women's, but I think that British crew has done everyone incredibly proud. Coming away from Tokyo, obviously that double, heartbreak, 0.2 seconds, I think it was, or even less, missing out on a medal, but coming with the gold this weekend must make up for that in some ways and really push them forward towards the Worlds.
So the women's lightweight double for me were the race of the weekend. You know, in that event, it's always so tight. We saw the blanket finish in Tokyo. They came up against the Olympic champions in Italy and the French, the silver medalists. And, you know, you can see who's moved on from that Tokyo experience. So to kind of have clear water, I just thought it's incredible. I mean, for me, Imogen Grant is the sort of athlete of the year, not just for Great Britain, but across the world. You know, what she's done in terms of racing, you know, the boat race at Bucks, world best time, the single at Lucerne, in between, you know, again, racing the single, the you know, Henley, coming up against Cara Curler. Only could sort of Cara Curler get the better of her at Henley, in between finishing her medical finals. I mean, she is unbelievable, and I'm really excited about how they're going to build on this performance even more. You know, I think it's going to be so special watching sort of Imogen and Emily in this period over to Paris.
I think it's also worth saying as well, we had a lightweight men's double entered for the first time this season, and they won the B final today in very creditable style. And I think it's a difficult one because we're all acutely aware that lightweight events will be are getting cut after Paris from the Olympic program, and I think we've got to be really sure. Like the lightweight women obviously are on something really good. We've got to be really sure that we've got the crews to contend. And we haven't really had the lightweight men's double in an A final for quite a while. So I hope that those guys have done enough in their B final today to warrant them having a World Champs campaign and really push through to gaining that A final slot at the World Champs.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same. I thought that we looked at the times, and I know it's always a bit tricky sometimes to look at the times, but their time is same as the sixth place in the A final. So they're definitely there or thereabouts. They're pushing themselves really brilliantly. I know they're not haven't been training solely with the team, so they've been doing a lot of that away in Scotland, and I think they've really been excellent in terms of how they've handled themselves and come into this race, being given an opportunity and really taken it. And okay, it doesn't look as shiny and fantastic as a medal, but it's a huge step for us to have a lightweight men's double entered and competing really competitively. So that was great. Also, I thought the lightweight women's double was incredible, obviously. It was a shame, I thought, that Maddie had to pull out of the single, because I think it would have been just, put the icing on, or the cherry on the icing, or whatever the phrase is. But yeah, I think that was a shame that she had to pull out, and I hope she's feeling better. I think it looked like she was, in some of the photos, starting to feel better, so that's good. But I thought, yeah, fantastic.
Fingers crossed that we can go on a high with the Olympic lightweights curtailing off Paris. We can go on a high, and it looks like we might have a pretty good chance of doing so. And just to round off the events from this weekend, moving back to the para events, Richard, if I come to you first for the mixed Cox 4, we've said already, Erin Kennedy, fantastic story there. And for that boat class as a whole, they've been just dominant, very, very dominant the last few years. Is this just that trend continuing unstopped?
Yeah, I think so. It's so nice to see Erin doing so well, but also just being so vocal about what she's going through. I think it's helping a huge number of people to spread such a difficult period of time in her life, and she's talking so openly and fantastically about that. And I know that I've had some really good conversations with her. She's made some excellent decisions, even though they're not the easy ones, to make sure that the team are still able to progress and go forwards. And I think she made a really good point in the interview she had, which is it's not just her that has to take this on, it's the whole team. And we know how strong, because they're such a small unit, how strong and close that para team are. And so it's not just the 5 of them, it's their coaches as well, and it's Ben as well, and I think, and Lauren as well, who's at home. And I think that unit is so strong, and I think that it'll be really tough for them, but I think we're seeing them dominate the event in the 4, and we're also seeing Ben just learning and learning, like Kath said earlier. He's just, every time he races, he learns something new, and he's so willing to learn that I think that 4 really take him with them. I think I was really pleased to see Ollie Stanhope just leading that boat. I think he's really stepped up, having gone through his Paralympic season the last 5 years, and then stepping into this season being the one that's still there, taking the reins off Erin when she needs him to, and really supporting. And of course it's not him on his own, but I think that he's, I've seen him do that really excellently, and I'm really pleased he's able to do that. So that's really exciting.
Very exciting for the para team. And I think to sort of wrap the results of GB this weekend, exciting across the board. Fantastic results all around. And as we've mentioned, the team is off on camp before we come back for the World Championships, and hopefully some more speed gains, a little more sharpness, and we can have a really successful time at the World Championships. But just to round off the debrief today, we're going to whip around very quickly and discuss our favourite races of the event. I think a couple of them may already have been spoiled as we went through. But Kath, if I come to you first, what stood out to you this weekend?
Oh, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Do you know, one thing we haven't mentioned is the Ollie Zeidler blow up at the end of his race. So that last race on Munich, the German course, and a course that he trains on a lot, this incredible athlete who came and won Henley, testing himself on the water at Henley to get better at rough water, in a kind of leading, commanding position, and literally kind of blew up in front of his home crowd with 200 to go. That last race, that singles race, was, the positions changed so much, didn't they? That was sort of quite a shock to me at the end of the regatta. And for him, he's got so much potential. He's got such an incredible physiology, but he's still learning, and he's been going for quite a few years now, and he had quite a tough time in Tokyo. So it just shows sort of how much learning happens out there. And I hope that sort of Graham can kind of feel, just by being part of that kind of crazy, incredible race today that he can pick up some lessons for next time. So, I thought the final race of the regatta just, it was another one of shocks, wasn't it? But from a British point of view, incredible races. But of course, minds are on Australia and China and Canada and the US who are there. And quite rightly, our crews need to kind of focus on racing them, in the next period. But very excited.
Yeah, I had that race down, the men's single, as one of the most interesting, maybe is the best word. It was just a bit shocking, and I didn't quite knew exactly what was going to happen. Exactly. And I think that for me was just a bit of, I was willing Graham to get right in there and get his barrel ball in there. And I thought he did a good job. But I thought that was just absolutely mad bit of chaos, which was enjoyable to watch. I think it's really worth mentioning that Ukrainian para double were phenomenal. They were just awesome, leading that race beautifully and just won it in real style. So I thought that was really special, and I liked that a lot. Probably my favourite race was the women's pair. I was gutted the British didn't quite get the gold, but I just thought that they raced it and rode it really, really brilliantly. I thought their style was excellent. I think that the two of them bring a huge amount of character. And I think that they row really well together, and I like their length particularly. And I hope that they can turn that pace and start challenging to just push themselves to the medals when the Kiwis come back in.
Absolutely. Really exciting to see what happens with that kind of team atmosphere after Caversham. And Angus, we've kept you waiting, but what stands out from this weekend?
So actually, something that not necessarily from a British point of view, but one of my most interesting races I thought was the men's double, and seeing that Spanish double really come to the fore and challenging the Sinkoviches like massively. Actually, I don't think they've been challenged in the double all season really, and actually Spain as a rowing nation is growing, and they had some really good boats in A finals and winning semi-finals and stuff like that. I think they've always really had like a men's pair, and they had a good women's pair who won the Europeans a couple of years ago. But they've got depth across the board now. Kind of it's fairly reminiscent of Ireland a couple of years ago, and now Ireland are becoming this slightly more major rowing nation. So that's really cool to see. And also in the men's double, I think the French double that won the Olympics are coming back together, and we've seen Androdias and Boucheron race in the men's single previous regattas this season, but I think they weren't racing here because they're training in the double again. So that'll be they're an exceptional crew, and it'd be really good to see come the World Championships, the Sinkoviches versus the French, and particularly with Jürgen training them as well.
British rowing still a force to be reckoned with on the international scene, and evidence this weekend by top of the medal tables in Munich. A fantastic weekend for the GB team, and as we said before, very, very exciting to see what going to happen at the World Championships in a few weeks' time. But for now, all that's left for me to do is to thank Catherine, Matilda and Angus for joining me this afternoon for our discussion around the European Rowing Championships, and we'll be back with the debrief next time on your screens. Goodbye.